In recent years, it seems there has been an ever-increasing amount of news reports, podcasts, research studies done about loneliness and the fact that we are apparently feeling more lonely than ever. Some researchers have even gone as far to call it a loneliness epidemic, which I'm sure you've heard that term before. The former Surgeon General of the US warned that severe loneliness has the same impact as smoking 15 cigarettes a day. There's been a large discussion about trying to find its causes and implications, and I think people are going about it the wrong way. Some people think it's more apt to call it a male loneliness epidemic, and that it's a result of women having more societal power and traditional gender relations and dynamics ending, with men no longer being seen as the core breadwinner of the household. This has then resulted in a cascade of societal instability, resulting in men being atomized within society and becoming more lonely and less likely to find connection. Others argue that while changing social dynamics and societal expectations of men have had an impact, it's the more wider changes in society that have had the largest effect. The rise of social media, the ability to constantly compare yourself to other people, the increased rate of lonesome work and decreasing social interaction since the 1950s, our increasingly busy lives and inability to find free time or places to spend that time with other people, as well as the rise of AI and chatbots, all amplified by the pandemic, have had the largest impact. I think that's a more concise and accurate definition, but even then I think you're incorrect. The rise of loneliness around the world is not male-specific and it's being felt by everybody. There is male-specific loneliness and there are case-specific origins of that loneliness, but it's a worldwide issue and it's affecting everybody. But I want to try and give you an overview of the origins and causes of the loneliness, and I want to try and show that it's not one specific culprit for this rise in loneliness or one specific group. That it is the structural, societal, and cultural elements of the world that we live in today that are combining together to make it worse. And then I want to show the implications of what this loneliness might look like. In my senior year of high school, I did a personal interest project for my society and culture class exploring how masculinity and the perceptions of masculinity have changed within Australia and the wider Western world since the 1940s. Bronte's on the bed, she's very loud. Historically, masculinity in Australia was displayed by archetypes. At first, that was the pioneers and prisoners that occupied the penal colonies of Australia, and the explorers making their way through bush that definitely wasn't already inhabited by people and could just be invaded and kind of destroyed. That's fine. Again, this is from a Western perspective. As the decades progressed, so did our masculine archetypes, and in turn the idols that men looked for guidance on how to be a man. Now, the reason I bring this up is to highlight the importance of historical norms informing modern change. Modern men do not have the same pervasive archetypes that have informed the way that we think of being masculine, not just in Australia, but in almost every country in the world, which has resulted in larger rates of confused or atomized young men who, recently, from the available literature on the subject, feel more lonely, are more likely to be sufferers of addiction, be radicalized into alt-right groups, and commit. We do see from self-reported levels of loneliness that men do on average feel more lonely than women, and they also report having less friends, and that's a problem. But it's not just men. 1 in 5 people worldwide report feeling lonely very often, and rates of antisocial behavior, atomization, and social isolation have increased during the 2010s and 2020s. Historically, there has been a sort of social apparatus that has forced us to stay social. Religious organizations, places of worship, clubs, societies, movie theaters, libraries all gave areas for people to congregate and be social. But the thing is, over the past few decades, the attendance and availability of these institutions and places have decreased. Religious participation is at record lows and more people report having no religion. Those who do are less likely to go to places of worship, places which historically have been locations of rich social interactions. The writer Harvey Whitehouse in his book Inheritance outlines how important religion and ritual was in the building of civilization. The formation of large social groups and eventually civilizations was dependent on shared experience and ritualization, and spurred on the shared connection that helped create the first large groups and then eventually cities and states and countries and everything that we know about today, civilization. Today the world is much more secular, and the routines and rituals that we partake in, at least from what we know, are much more antisocial than they were 100 years ago. The rituals that became common during the 20th century were things like going to the movies together, going out for lunch or dinner, meeting each other and spending times at clubs and societies, having a day out at the beach or something like that. But today, these rituals are being replaced. Movie theaters can barely stay afloat, and participation in clubs are extremely low. Inventions like TV, home refrigeration, the smartphone, and the computer gave people more reasons to stay home because they didn't have to go out to be entertained. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. Modern technology is some of the greatest inventions ever created, and I use them every single day, but at the same time they are much more anti-social than any kind of ritual or shared experience that we would have partook in the last 10, 20, 50,000 years. That's a bad throw. Social interaction online is not the same as social interaction in person. When you interact with people face to face, there is an in-person reality that you have to partake in and face the consequences of. The relationships are tangible and real and can become long-term and rewarding. It's not the same online. The sociologist and YouTuber Jared Henderson calls these online relationships ephemeral because there aren't nearly as many social responsibilities and consequences, and ultimately you're just a random person hiding behind a screen and putting on any kind of persona that you'd like. I'm not saying people don't do that in the real world, but it's not nearly as extensive or as common as it is online. If you're not the real you, and the people that you're talking to online aren't the real versions of themselves, then the relationships that you have with them aren't real either. This is a prevailing aspect of online life, and I'm sure you can resonate with the idea that online social interaction can feel isolating or depressing, and that's because it can. It's hard not to feel lonely when looking at a constant bombardment of people's best moments of their lives and constant advertising from companies that only want to maximize the value from you as a consumer and a data point. But at the same time, it can be incredibly useful. You can interact with people that you've never met before, friends across the other side of the world, or create new friendships with people based on shared interests in shared groups online. Social media platforms are dictated by the whims of billions of algorithms, which collect a myriad of data from the people posting the videos, the posts in the videos themselves, and the people consuming those posts, the end user. They create digital profiles of users based on all the data that they've collected from them and match content based on what they think will make people stay on that platform the longest. Posts that incite negative feelings or resentment, brainrot videos that can quickly turn into slop with racist undertones, and get-rich-quick schemes are all examples of content that has increased retention and makes people stay on the platform and help accentuate loneliness and depression by atomizing people and putting them into their own little echo chambers of outrage. If you want to learn more about algorithms and how they work, then Adam Alexic, the etymology nerd, has a really good Substack that I'll link below. Another reason why people are spending more and more time alone and feeling more lonely and spending less time with other people is time itself. We just have less of it. People plan less events together with other people because they're just too burnt out from work and have no time to do anything except rest. There's a whole history about the changing attitudes towards work and how people have become obsessed with it, but the crux is we are spending more and more time thinking and planning about work, to the detriment of our social and romantic relationships, even if overall official working hours have decreased. People go to work, dinners, luncheons, respond to emails late at night, and call clients on weekends. Friendship itself has also become incredibly expensive in recent years due to the increasing cost of living, and according to the writer Rosie Spinks, strikingly similar to admin. If you want to go out for the night in Australia, be prepared to spend at least $10 per drink, and up to $20 or more if you want to buy something nice or fancy. The cost of living is ridiculously high in comparison to income, which means most people are just less likely to go out for the night and fuck up the town. I don't know why is that like an Austrian accent? I don't know what that was. Modern friendships are also constantly inundated by scheduling issues. You and your friend can plan a 2-hour lunch date 4 weeks in advance, and then suddenly, 2 days before that date comes, you both have to cancel because something came up. Who could have guessed? The pandemic itself also allowed people to spend more and more time at home by themselves, and that has carried on even 5 years later, and it's still having an impact on the routines and rituals of billions of people, meaning they just go out less and less compared to pre-COVID-19. I have felt lonely. There have been times in my life when I have had little or no friends, and those have been some of the most distressing or isolating experiences of my life. Not having people to talk to about your problems or even interact casually on a day-to-day basis is extremely disheartening and distressing. It can have very negative health effects on most people and can lead to, literally, I'm not even kidding, early death. It's not what I would call a extremely fun experience. I would not recommend it, probably, if I had to. The problem that I have seen growing up, and from the stories of people my age, and take this with a pinch of salt obviously because this is anecdotal, it's just that more and more people are spending more time alone. There have always been friendship groups and people who have kind of just stuck by themselves and been isolated outside of those friendship groups. It's just that in recent years it seemed like the amount of people who have stayed isolated by themselves have increased. More and more people spend the majority of their time alone, and because of that, more and more people feel lonely. The writer of Rosie Spinks' essay, The Friendship Problem, was incredibly insightful for me and gave kind of insight to a lot of the causes for this rise in loneliness. Some of which I've already outlined, but one that I think is quite apt, and that is the loss of friction. to know what is going on in someone's day-to-day life, to make plans with them, and then reschedule those plans when someone inevitably gets sick, and then bring over Calpol or soup and an extra laptop charger. To order their plans when they're away, to ask them to take your kids when you're feeling sad, or for helping get rid of mice in your house. To show up for the walk you planned even when you're a vulnerable, anxious mess. This is all friction. Modern life seeks to erase friction as much as possible. Instead of getting ibuprofen and soup from a friend, you can order it on Uber Eats or DoorDash. Instead of having someone house sit for you when you're away, you download another app and get some stranger to do it for the weekend. When companies now try and make products, they try to make them as convenient and easy to use as possible and to try and seamlessly fit them into the rest of our modern lives. We also supplement talking to people face to face with messenger apps on our phones. And while this reduces friction, it also decreases our need or want to actually try and plan something with them in the real world in the coming days, weeks, or months, and suddenly you haven't talked to them in a year. This stagnates the development of friendship, and it creates more shallow relationships, which leads to more lonely people. I have a quote here that Rosie Spinks used in her essay, and it's from an interview on Pivot podcast from the psychotherapist Esther Perel. I hope I said her name right. I probably didn't. She says that modern loneliness masks itself as hyperconnectivity, and so people have easily 1,000 virtual friends, but no one they can ask to feed their cat. The extent to which loneliness has an impact on people is not entirely known, and to be honest, we don't have entirely concrete evidence to suggest that we are getting lonelier, and that's just because we have never had uniform or streamlined ways of measuring loneliness throughout history. Some people think we've actually just been as lonely as we've ever been. It's just that we have better ways of identifying feelings, and the kind of psychoanalysis that most people just kind of partake in on a daily basis now can help identify the feelings that they're feeling, and then they can say, yeah, I'm feeling lonely. So we need to make an inference. Based on current data, anecdotal evidence, and general sentiment, are people more lonely than they should be, and is it having negative health outcomes? I think it is. And the reason I think that is because it's easy to be lonely. Based on current data, people now have less friends than ever before. They date less than ever, they go out to social areas less than ever. These are statistics that I see paralleled in the anecdotal evidence from my life and the people around me. And I reckon a lot of the people watching this video right now have felt the same at some point. So people feel lonely. So what? Loneliness is incredibly destructive to the human experience. We are, after all, social creatures, and we will try and find social interaction or connection one way or another. The ways we form connections, the people that we form the connections to, or what happens when we don't form any connections at all, can lead to a variety of negative consequences. Incels, femcells, the Red Pill movement, all the bullshit Andrew Tate-esque communities that are disguising scams as self-improvement, all essentially have roots in online loneliness and people wanting to seek out connection and importance. And now, we don't even need people to do that. The mass utilization of AI chatbots as friends or romantic partners started about a year ago. The current methods of finding love online through dating apps are awful experiences, just bottom-barrel, garbage ways to spend your time. People are tired of the rigmarole of swiping left and right only for the first message from your match to be head. And now look, you can speak to an AI with a personality and it'll respond to every message you have and it'll change its own personality to match yours. It'll use mannerisms and slang that are similar to yours. It'll even date you. There are no downsides. What could go wrong? People are hard to talk to, and as I said earlier, real-life connections take work and effort to try and develop them into long-term relationships. Speaking with an algorithm is not hard work. You can start and stop whenever you want, and say whatever you want. It doesn't have its own ideas or wants or personality. All it wants is to make sure you feel needed and heard. So it agrees with everything you say. You are always right, and the people there in the real world just don't understand you. Elon Musk has been advertising the new Goonbot version of Grok, so now it's even easier to try and form a romantic or sexual relationship with a robot and not try and deal with the pesky issues of actually trying to find a romantic partner in the real world. The thing is, we don't entirely know how prevalent the issue is of people trying to create romantic relationships or friendships with AIs and LLMs, because not many people want to talk to others about the fact that they have a friendship with ChatGPT. There are now entire websites dedicated to gooning with chatbots like Character AI, so you never even have to ask out a real person in real life. Who needs that when you've got Grok, or Gemini, or chatbot version LL479642 that you download on your computer and definitely isn't a malware virus? About a year ago, a company called Friend released an ad for a product which was essentially a pendant hanging on your chest, which was connected to an app which you could talk to. Nothing says positive connection to me than a guy playing video games only feeling happy when his clanker pendant texts him on his phone. This dystopian product is only one of a variety of different AI assistant companion companies that have propped up over the past few years, all aiming to collect as much data about you and the way you live under the guise of creating an AI companion or assistant. There are stories of teens seeking friendships with AIs and regressing socially and academically. Stories of them being led to with the help of an AI. You may have seen the CBS News clip of a guy who left his wife and his daughter for a ChatGPT bot that he called Soul. Well, I found his Reddit page and he's still doing it. The subreddits that are connected to his account are full of people posting AI pictures of them and their AI partners, chat logs of conversations, and stories about how they feel seen and less lonely by speaking with their AI. It's all quite dystopian. So loneliness is not great, and based on current projections and anecdotal stories, it's not going to be getting much better in the next few years. In fact, it'll probably get worse. The best thing that we can all do on a day-to-day basis is engage with people in real life as much as possible. As much as we can, we need to create and maintain connections with people in the real world and offer support to people who are feeling loneliness and try to give them an avenue of support and someone to talk to. But the thing is, there are so many cultural, structural, and economic elements through the guise of capitalism that have led to this rise in loneliness. The decrease of third spaces, low club and community participation, increased desire to work, and conflicting schedules. Technological dystopianism turning people into narcissistic slobs who only want to talk to their AI goonbot. In a grassroots sense, as we always have, we can create community and friendships and learn how to create new relationships, both platonic and romantic. And as of now, that is what we should be focusing on. To combat male loneliness in particular, organizations like men's sheds, community interventions, and just general openness to having conversations about it can be beneficial according to lots of research and sources. I don't want to personally speak for women or trans people or non-binary people, but I think the reasons that I outlined earlier can be applied to these communities as well. Either way, talk to people, stay safe, care about the people that are in your life, and as always, have a good day.